All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are taking a deep dive into Hosea chapter 2, verse 14.
A verse that really offers a very unique look at betrayal and forgiveness.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
When we think about being hurt, like really deeply hurt by someone we love,
Right.
our natural instincts are, anger, resentment,
Yeah.
maybe even revenge.
It's like a protection mode, right?
Yeah.
Trying to push away the pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Hosea, this verse, it presents like a totally different approach.
Yeah.
It's God's response to Israel's unfaithfulness.
Yeah. And it's not what you'd expect.
No, not at all.
It really flips the script.
To get the full impact, though, we need to kind of set the scene. We're in Hosea, where God is speaking to Israel through the prophet Hosea.
Yeah.
And the relationship between God and Israel, it's shown as this marriage covenant.
So like a deep, intimate bond.
Exactly, like a sacred promise between two partners. But the thing is, Israel hasn't been faithful to the covenant.
They've turned away from God and started worshiping other gods. It's basically spiritual adultery.
Whoa. So imagine like your spouse, your partner, the person you vowed your life to betraying you like that.
Deeply painful.
Yeah.
And the text doesn't shy away from that pain at all. It talks about God's deep disappointment, his heartbreak. Imagine that pain.
From someone who's all-powerful, all-knowing.
Yeah.
Intense.
And you'd think from a human perspective there would be a very harsh reaction, right?
Oh, for sure. Like if a husband discovered his wife was unfaithful to him, his response would be
Rage.
wanting to punish.
Wanting to retaliate.
Primal.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of anger or vengeance, God says something totally unexpected, and this is where verse 14 comes in. Therefore, I will allure her.
Powerful statement, right? Because it just defies everything we would expect.
Totally. He doesn't say he's going to divorce her, punish her, abandon her.
Nope.
He says he's going to allure her.
So let's unpack that word allure for a minute.
Yeah.
It's not about force or coercion.
No, not at all. It's about drawing her back with love and tenderness, winning her heart, not demanding obedience through fear or punishment.
So, if you're being betrayed by someone close to you, a partner, a spouse, even a best friend, how do we even wrap our heads around this type of response?
Yeah, it seems so different from what we might naturally feel.
Absolutely.
I think that's the beauty of this passage. It challenges us to go beyond our immediate emotional reactions,
Right.
to consider a different path, a path that is inspired by a love that goes beyond our human limitations.
Yeah, this is definitely pushing me to think differently about how to deal with betrayal.
Good.
I'm really interested to see where this goes.
Well, I think the first step is recognizing that this isn't just about God responding to Israel's unfaithfulness. This is a reflection of his nature, his core identity.
Okay, now that's intriguing. Let's dig into that a little more.
What's fascinating is that throughout the Bible, God constantly demonstrates this unwavering commitment to love and forgiveness. Even when people mess up repeatedly, it's like his love isn't dependent on us being worthy or getting things right.
It's a constant.
It's fundamental to who he is.
So it's not about earning his love or favor.
No.
It's about recognizing it's already there.
It's freely given.
Wow. That's a radical idea, especially in a world where we often feel like we have to earn love to prove we are worthy of it.
Yeah.
But this passage suggests that true, authentic love
Isn't a transaction.
is a gift,
Freely offered.
even when it's not deserved.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is something to think about. It's like this verse in Hosea is giving us a glimpse into a different type of love.
Right.
A love that operates on a whole other level.
And I think that's the key to understanding how God can choose to allure instead of punish.
Okay.
It's because his love is so deeply rooted in who he is. It's not just an emotion for him. It's his very essence.
So how do we translate this radical, almost otherworldly approach to love into something we can actually apply in our own lives?
Right. Because it's one thing to admire it.
Yeah. But it's another thing entirely to live it out.
Right.
Especially when we're dealing with, the pain of betrayal.
Right.
That very human desire to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Even to strike back.
Yeah. That's a great question, and it's one we'll be exploring more as we continue this deep dive. Stay tuned. My mind is already, blown thinking about love as a gift, not a transaction.
It's a big shift.
It is.
Yeah.
But how do we even start to bridge the gap between this divine concept
Yeah.
of alluring love
Yeah.
and the messiness of human relationships?
Yeah.
Especially when the betrayal is so personal.
Right.
And the hurt is so real.
It's a valid question, and the answer is it's not simple. You know, we can't just flip a switch and suddenly operate on this level of love. But we can look to this passage in Hosea for inspiration,
Right.
a model for a different way of dealing with these situations,
Right.
where our human instincts might lead us down a different path.
So you're saying even though we can't perfectly copy God's infinite love,
Right.
we can still learn from his approach.
Exactly. Remember this story of Hosea and Israel?
Yeah.
This isn't just some abstract theological idea.
Right.
It's a real story
Yeah.
about a relationship that was broken by betrayal, yet still had the potential for healing and restoration. And that potential was rooted in a love that chose to allure, to draw back, instead of punishing.
I'm starting to see how powerful that can be.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
instead of letting the betrayal control our response,
Yeah.
we can choose a different path.
Yes.
One that's guided by a deeper understanding of love.
Exactly. And that choice,
Yeah.
that decision to respond with love instead of reacting with anger or resentment, that's where real transformation can begin.
So it's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist.
No,
Or saying that what they did was okay.
not at all. It's about recognizing that there's a way to move forward
Right.
that doesn't just keep the cycle of hurt and bitterness going.
But how do we actually do that? I mean, it's easy to like the idea of alluring love,
Right.
but to actually live it,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with real emotions,
Yeah.
deep wounds.
You're absolutely right. It's a process, not a quick fix. It requires honesty, vulnerability. And that can be scary, especially when we've been hurt before.
Because opening yourself up to that kind of love,
Yeah.
it opens you up to being hurt again.
There's always that risk. But the key, I think, is remembering that responding with love
Yeah.
doesn't mean you become a doormat or sacrifice your own well-being. It's about setting boundaries, knowing your limits,
Right.
and recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step away from a situation that's hurting you.
So it's not about being passive
Yeah.
or ignoring red flags.
No, it's about choosing to approach the situation with a different mindset,
Right.
one that's rooted in a deeper understanding of love and forgiveness.
It sounds like forgiveness is a journey.
It is. It's not a destination. It's about letting go of the need to control the outcome
Yeah.
and instead focusing on creating a heart that's open to healing and reconciliation.
It almost sounds like surrender, like letting go of the need to be right or make the other person pay.
There's definitely an element of surrender there, but I think it's more about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves,
Okay.
to a love that isn't dependent on us perfectly understanding or
Exactly.
controlling the situation.
This is reminding you of what you said before about God's love being constant,
Yeah.
a fundamental part of who he is. Are you saying that by tapping into this alluring love, we're aligning ourselves with that divine love and letting it flow through us?
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's not about suddenly being able to love perfectly.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
There's a power greater than us, a love that's already there, waiting to be embraced.
That's a powerful thought. But it takes a lot of courage to actually live that out, to choose love, even when everything inside you
Yeah,
is screaming for something else.
it does. It's a radical choice. It goes against our instincts, our patterns of behavior. And it's not always easy. You know, there are going to be days when it feels impossible, when the hurt and resentment feel overwhelming.
So what do we do then? How do we keep choosing love when it feels like we're drowning in pain?
I think that's where grace comes in. And not just grace for the person who hurt us,
Right.
but grace for ourselves.
Grace for ourselves.
Yeah.
What does that even look like?
It's recognizing that we're not perfect. We're going to mess up.
Right.
We're going to fall back into old patterns of thinking and behaving.
So giving ourselves permission to be human,
Yes. To not have all the answers,
Yeah.
to stumble along the way.
to not be perfect.
Exactly. It's about showing ourselves the same compassion and understanding that we would offer to a loved one who is struggling.
It's so easy to get caught up in self-judgment,
Right.
the should-haves and could-haves.
Yeah.
But maybe the most loving thing
Yeah.
is just acknowledging our own humanness.
Or limitations.
Yeah. I'm realizing that alluring love isn't just about relationships with other people.
Right.
It's about our relationship with ourselves, too.
That's a crucial point. True healing, true transformation. It begins with self-love, with recognizing our own worthiness, even when we're broken.
This is really changing how I think about how to deal with not just betrayal,
Right.
but any situation where I'm hurting, you know? Instead of focusing on what the other person did or didn't do,
Yeah.
I can choose a response that connects me with a deeper source of love and healing.
And that choice, that
Yeah.
decision to respond with love instead of reacting with pain, that's where real freedom is.
I feel like we've covered a lot,
Hmm?
but I also feel like there's more to uncover.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how this alluring love might play out in specific situations, like in everyday life.
That's a great place to pick up our conversation. Let's dive into some real-world examples of this radical approach to love and forgiveness.
Okay, so we've been unpacking this idea of alluring love as a response to betrayal,
Yeah.
inspired by Hosea 2:14.
Right.
But I think it would be really helpful to see what this looks like practically, like in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that alluring love isn't like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's more of a principle, a way of approaching relationships that takes a lot of discernment and sensitivity, because each situation is unique.
So there's no like magic formula or step-by-step guide?
Not really. But we can explore some key elements of alluring love
Okay.
that can guide us when betrayal happens in a relationship.
Okay, I like that. So where do we even begin?
Well, one of the most fundamental elements is empathy. It's about trying to see things from the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with what they did.
So even when you've been betrayed, you're supposed to have empathy for the person who hurt you.
It sounds hard, right?
Yeah, that's incredibly challenging.
It is, especially when you're hurting and angry. But remember, empathy doesn't mean you're condoning their actions.
Right.
It just means you're trying to see their point of view, understanding that they might have their own struggles.
Their own wounds.
Exactly.
That's a good distinction. So it's not about excusing the behavior.
No.
It's about trying to understand what led to it.
Right. And that understanding can sometimes lead to compassion.
Okay, so compassion, that's another key element.
It is. Compassion is about recognizing that suffering is a shared human experience. We all make mistakes. We all have moments of weakness.
We've all been there.
Exactly. And we all need grace and understanding.
So when someone betrays you, compassion might look like recognizing that they're also hurting.
Yeah, exactly. And that can really soften your heart,
Yeah.
make it easier to let go of anger and resentment. It doesn't mean you're minimizing your own pain,
Right.
but you're approaching the situation with a more open and forgiving heart.
This makes me think about what we were talking about before,
Yeah.
about showing grace not just to the other person, but to ourselves too.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is so important in this whole process.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're doing our best with what we have, and that it's okay to not have all the answers.
To make mistakes.
Exactly, to stumble along the way.
So if you're struggling to have empathy or compassion for the person who betrayed you,
Yeah.
maybe you need to start by showing yourself that same kindness.
That's a great point. Often our ability to love and forgive others is tied to how much we love and accept ourselves.
It's all connected.
It is.
This is making me realize that alluring love isn't about these grand gestures
Yeah.
or some big dramatic forgiveness scene.
Right. It's much more subtle than that.
It's about empathy, compassion, self-compassion.
In everyday life.
Yeah, in our normal interactions.
Exactly. It's about those small choices we make
Hmm.
in how we respond to tough situations, how we communicate our needs, and how we hold space for our own pain and the pain of others.
So it's less about forcing a certain outcome and more about changing your internal approach.
Your way of being.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And that change in perspective.
It can really impact your relationships. Create a more loving and compassionate environment where healing and reconciliation can actually happen.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Mhm.
We started with this idea of alluring love from Hosea 2:1 and how it challenges the way we usually respond to betrayal.
Right.
We talked about empathy, compassion,
Self-compassion.
all key parts of this approach.
And how those things can transform not just our relationships, but ourselves.
I think the biggest takeaway is that alluring love isn't passive. It's an active choice we make every single moment to approach tough situations with a heart that's open to healing and reconciliation.
It's a journey.
It is not a destination.
And it takes courage.
Vulnerability.
And a willingness to lean into a love that goes beyond what we think we're capable of.
And as we all try to figure out these complex human relationships,
Yeah.
may we remember the example in Hosea 2:14 and choose to respond to betrayal with a love that wants to restore and transform.
Us and those around us.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep choosing love, even when it's hard.